Yo, what's poppin', everybody? It's the No Level Cap podcast. We back once again with the crew, talking about all the anime, all the gaming, none of the bullshit. I want y'all to give me a minute to introduce my incredible co-hosts. We got the collector of collectors and the master of Twitch, Will Coleman. Will, what's going on with that Romantic Saga 2?
Right now, I'm playing that as we speak because since the topic is JRPGs, I'm gonna be playing one while we talk about it. So yeah, it'll probably get my thoughts together. And I added another piece to the collection, but see, this right here was just me indulging because I bought it again.
Yeah, that's one of them ones that everybody loves.
So yeah, I'm here.
Next up, we got the Black Daredevil and the secret weapon of No Level Cap, Terrence Flowers. What's up, Terrence?
Man, I'm not gonna lie. It's been an interesting week for me. It's been like a roller coaster. There's been some highs. There's been some lows. Some highs that turn into lows. But we're here and we're ready to talk about a very interesting subject. So yeah, I mean overall I'm good. I mean I said all that, but I mean I'm good today. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Oh yeah, man. Actually, this is Terrence's topic. Like, we had an entirely different topic, and Terrence suggested this. And the second he said it, I was like, "Yep, that makes the most sense." And so, like, we came up with some questions, and like that became the topic because I was like, it feels like something that we kind of needed to talk about. Yeah. So, next up, we got the living cartoon and the man with the golden voice, Rakeem Beck. Welcome back, Rakeem.
Hey, I'm glad to be back. And for the audience out there who don't know, I got to apologize in advance. Last week, I was prepped and ready to go. And in this chair, this very chair, in this very room, I closed my eyes right before we went on air. And I didn't wake up until 3 hours after the podcast. So I apologize, everyone. They had to go on without me because I guess I was just too tired. But I have returned. I am energetic. A lot of things have changed for me. I'm moving into a new position in my job. Well, a new job. Sorry. And I'm having a bit of fun doing some light acting stuff on the side, some short films and things like that. That's been fun, and playing a lot of Destiny 2 since the new expansion just came out. So I found ways to keep professional gaming and my side activities together. So I've been pretty great.
See, it is possible. Don't let nobody tell you it can't be done. What's up, Terrence?
I was going to say, Keem got knocked out like a light.
Next up, we got One Punch Man and the Master of Combos, Mr. Devin Butts. What's going on, Devin?
Oh, not much, man. Finally feeling much better this week. As you know, it's been like a trickle of sickness this past week. Like 3 of the 4 people on this podcast were sick last week. And I think I was like possibly patient 0. But I think for the most part, everybody's kind of back in working order. Maybe not 100%, but I think we're all back in working order.
Yeah.
I've been playing a few games this week. Actually, going to soon play with my compadre Rakeem over here, a game that is very dear to my heart, and kind of goes into this topic we're talking about. Tales of Symphonia. They did like the remaster, or not remaster. What is it, a remaster? I think it is a remaster because they did one already. It's like on PS3.
It's a remaster.
Yeah, it's a remaster.
Yeah, which at this point I wish they would just remake the game, but got that going, so we're gonna be playing that soon. I've been playing some fighting games. I saw the Gal got released as a mod in Marvel 3, so I got to do a combo video for that soon. Probably.
Man, looking forward to that.
Yeah, he, Mr. Terrence himself is actually Gal. He got the high top, so if you didn't notice, he's actually the black guy.
By the way, Devin, where can they catch your combo videos and your content as well?
Oh, it's on my YouTube channel, Gaming Lift, all caps, GAME at the letter NLIFT with 2 T's. So if you like mostly Marvel content for the most part, I do a lot of combo videos for that. If you like that, just stop by. If you don't, it don't matter. I'm still doing it anyway. But but yeah, actually haven't. Last time I mentioned Atomic Heart, I haven't actually played that much of it this week. I want to get back into it. I'm not gonna lie, some things about the game I just keep seeing is almost kind of made me not want to play the game. Just a little bit. It's just some stuff is kind of a little overboard with it. I showed one of my roommates the scene where you meet the upgrade robot. He's like, "All right, I'm going to bed now." I was like, I wasn't ready for that. It's like, But yeah, I'm here. I ain't gonna say no more because this topic right here, let's get in it, man. This is one right here. So
Yeah, lastly, I am Sage Ashford, the man that won't shut the fuck up. If you didn't know, No Level Cap goes live every Monday morning. We appear on YouTube for the video fans, but if you prefer the audio version, we're live on Spotify as well. We're also on TikTok. Give us a follow before the government bans the clock app for good. And I ain't lying. Like, I've been saying this for weeks, and finally they talking about that it gave the president the power to go ahead and get TikTok the fuck up out of here. And people and all my co-hosts was like, dang, Sage, I thought this was a joke, but it looked like it's about to happen. I'm like, yeah, they want TikTok to fuck up out of here. But if TikTok don't work out, we still on YouTube giving y'all the shorts for all the short lovers. As for me, like I've been, the topic this week, as has been mentioned, is JRPGs. I've been playing a lot of JRPGs really for the last year now. The Legend of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel 3, then 4, Xenoblade 1 and 2, beat them both last year, beat both Cold Steels last year. Currently, right now, well, not beat Cold Steel 4 this year. Playing Octopath Traveler right now. Like, I've been playing a shit ton of JRPGs. They have been my life's blood for a long time. And we wanted to get into it mostly because Final Fantasy XVI popped up. You know, and at this point, Final Fantasy 16 is safe to, well, Final Fantasy is safe to say is the biggest JRPG on the market. You know, like there is no, if you want to say there's a competitor, I guess you could say Pokemon, but like when people are looking for a JRPG, very few people go like, oh, I got to go get the new Pokemon. Like you get Pokemon because you like Pokemon. Yeah. People not really getting Pokemon because they're looking for a JRPG. At least that's how I feel. If anybody, you know, disagrees, y'all let me know. Okay, I'm just checking. But like,
I definitely agree with that. I've never considered like Pokemon. Like, I know it's a JRPG, but it's not like I think of it when I think of JRPGs. Yeah, right. It's like it's just its own thing.
Right.
I've discussed that topic with non-JRPG fans who I've told them that this is technically like a Japanese role-playing game, and that thought never came into their heads of it being role.
I mean, it's got the same, you know, it's got the stats, it's got the story kind of unfolds like a JRPG, but it's just like I always go by if I ask for a JRPG or if someone asks me for a JRPG recommendation, like they Sage, you know, like I know you play a lot of them. Can you recommend me a JRPG? I always go by would they be pissed if I recommended this, you know? And along those same lines, like like Dark Souls is like, man, that's technically a JRPG. I'm like, if I ask for a JRPG and you recommend me Dark Souls, I'm going to never ask you for a recommendation again. Like, don't do that to me. Like all that stamina and all the other and like the super punishing action combat. And I asked for that. And then like there's no story. I asked for that. You gave me the wrong thing. You thought you was being funny, and now I don't trust you no more. So like, and that kind of goes along with the first question that I have. How do y'all define JRPGs personally? Final Fantasy XVI's producer, and this is why this kind of came up. Naoki Yoshida, or Yoshi-P as he's known, he talked about how he doesn't like the term JRPG, and that started kind of a firestorm discussing whether or not we need the term and what the term even means. And so now I kind of wanted to ask y'all, since everybody on this panel, like this isn't like any other subject we've ever done. We all play JRPGs. We've all been huge JRPG fans at one point. I think all of us probably have a JRPG in our top 5 or top 10 games of all time. So like this is a subject that kind of hits home with all of us. So I kind of wanted to ask y'all, how do you define the term JRPG personally? Terrence?
Man, there's a lot to say here, and I'm going to try and keep my thoughts pretty short and like together. One thing that I will say is that if I'm being honest, when I was a kid growing up in the 90s, when I heard the term RPG, I just automatically thought, you know, hey, it's Japanese. And I know that Japan isn't like the creator of all things RPG. I know that RPG, you know, technically comes from like tabletop, and then there's like Western developers that made RPGs, and that kind of also inspired the creation of technically JRPGs, or Japan's interpretation of an RPG. So I know all that. But when it came to video games, I mean, if we're being honest, in like the 80s and the 90s, video games came from Japan because, you know, the consoles were made in Japan and the games were done by Japanese developers. So a lot of the RPGs were Japanese made, especially like the bigger ones. And of course, if we're talking RPGs, we have to talk like JRPGs. I mean, we have to talk Final Fantasy. Like that and Dragon Quest are the JRPGs. They're the ones who kind of essentially started it all. But when I think of a JRPG, how I define it is in terms of like how I differ it from like Western style RPGs. JRPGs, in my opinion, have more of a high fantasy setting. And that's not to say that Western RPGs don't have like high fantasy setting. A lot of this that I'm going to say is kind of like generalized. It's not to say that one can't have the other, but just in general, how I view JRPGs. JRPGs normally have like more bombastic character designs, bombastic character designs, just really standoutish, very interesting looking, sometimes to like a fault where they look a little too goofy. Like I know people point out like all the zippers on some JRPG characters, like on their jackets and pants. Yeah. But that kind of stuff, in my opinion, I've always found it cool because it's so different from what you see from the West. And I guess that's the main thing, is that the reason that I was so drawn to JRPGs growing up is that they just look so different. Kind of the same thing with anime, is that when I looked at anime for the first time, like Sailor Moon, I saw that I was like, this is a cartoon, but it doesn't really look like a traditional cartoon. And that's the same way I view JRPGs, is that I look at them as opposed to like Western RPGs. Let's say, I think really for me, there was more of that divide in terms of West and East style Japanese, really for me personally, in like the PS2 era, PS2 and Xbox era, because that's when you really start to see like the rise of stuff like Elder Scrolls, your Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, pretty much the rise of like BioWare and companies like that really were the big Western RPG makers. But yeah, you see like the difference between something like a Final Fantasy X and a Elder Scrolls, and like how Elder Scrolls, one, it's in first person, but there's so much you can do with the world in Elder Scrolls, whereas Final Fantasy is a bit more like story and character driven. And of course, you know, JRPGs are also known for turn-based combat. So, and also I will say one thing that for me that has always been the big standout with JRPGs is the music. Man, music in JRPGs is some of my just my favorite music, period. Not even video games, just period. Regardless of genre, artist, whatever. I just love listening to this day JRPG music, whether it's Persona, Final Fantasy, or just any other games. So yeah, just that's really how I define JRPG, is this that, I mean, literally it just comes from Japan, but there's just this style to it that is just so different than what I was used to seeing from, you know, just stuff from America. So I don't know if that totally makes sense, but that's in my head how I see JRPGs. Just this really cool thing that I've just always enjoyed looking at and will continue to play.
That is a solid definition. Like ultimately the thing we're gonna have to focus on or think about here is like it is going to be more like people are looking for like a hard and fast definition, but like no genre is going to have that, because if you try to do that, then you forced any genre, not just JRPGs, any genre, you force them into too rigid of a box, and then they're not going to be able to expand. And then as they expand, you're going to look at them and be like, well, this doesn't have that, so is it really part of that genre? And it's like,
which feeds into the argument that Yoshi-P was making.
True. That's very true. But like, it's certain things that you can say, a genre that does have and doesn't have, but I don't think, to some extent, I feel like we got to use, and I hate using this term because it really, everybody ain't got it. So it's kind of a misnomer, but like to some extent, we got to use common fucking sense, like, oh, wait, this ain't got this. So is it really like, but this has this, and is this a JRPG? Like, come on, man. Like, you know what the fuck we talking about. Don't try to be cute. Stop trying to be funny. Stop trying to, you trying to force a specific, you trying to force shit into a box so you can get the answer that you want. And it's disingenuous. Will, to you, what is a JRPG, man?
To me, a JRPG is literally kind of what Terrence said, because growing up, all I knew was that I had stuff like, well, I'm going to go ahead and start off what I really started off with my RPGs was Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars. I had that as a kid, and I knew it was an RPG, but you couldn't have told me it was from Japan, because I'm just like, well, games are being made. So I'm just buying them. Don't know no better. But the older I got and I started seeing where they kind of lined up at, where Final Fantasy was really taking over a good chunk of my life, I'm like, oh, this is what JRPGs are. But because every game that I played, at least of a JRPG, always had like not necessarily a lot of the same tropes, but a lot of the same ideas, mechanics, concepts, things of that sort that made them be those games. And I didn't care that all of them kind of fit in that box because they were the games I loved. Like turn-based, active time, some even action related, and level up systems, magic, actions, all that stuff, the big worlds to explore, and so on and so forth. Japanese RPGs literally like they separate themselves from Western RPGs in a way is where it's like let's get it straight with Elder Scrolls and stuff like maybe even Fallout. Like to me, those games are like big worlds. Like you just explore them. Like they kind of just drop you in, give you the story, but you have to take the story as you see fit and start making choices as you see fit to decide what happens to who, what happens to where, and where you go next. Whereas a JRPG is kind of more of like a straight shot, but you can kind of take it as you see fit. You can take your time with it, and then you get to a certain point where it lets you go back and forth.
Yeah.
Where it opens up to you later rather than just being like, here's the sandbox, now go. And so for me, a JRPG literally is just one straight story. It's like opening the book from front to end, from front to back. Instead of you opening a book and it's blank. And you have to fill in the pages yourself as you go along with a Western RPG. That's kind of the best way for me to describe it is with a JRPG, you have a book, it's written for you, you follow it to the end. With a Western RPG, they drop you in. They give you some pieces, but you have to kind of put your other pieces in there together to make that story work and get it to the end. So that's the best way I can kind of describe JRPGs to me.
I like that interpretation. Yeah, I've never heard it put that way before, but that's really interesting. I like that.
Yeah, that's a very solid definition.
Yeah.
Along the same lines. I mean, okay, first off, let's get this out the way.
Sure.
I do understand where Yoshi-P is coming from. Western games media in the 7th generation and really towards the end of the 6th generation was borderline racist when they talked about Japanese gaming, especially Japanese RPGs. Terrence and Will, I know y'all in particular saw the tweet that I dropped in there from like X-Play back in the day, and it was like a review of Baten Kaido's origins. That shit was, I was like, yo, man, this man, Adam Sessler, got racist as hell. I was, he's trying to make a little joke about the protagonist name, Sagi. And, he just kept making a joke about sake. And I'm like, all right, bro, we get it. Like, this shit ass. Like, the joke was ass, and it felt forced, and it was, like, stereotypical. I'm like, hey, buddy, like, and we're not going to get into how he reacted when he saw that on Twitter 15 years later. Go see it for yourself. It's something to see. Like, that shit kind of embarrassing. It was, there was a lot of that. Like, there's the story that's been going around lately, reminding everybody about Phil Fish, the guy who designed Fez. And, it was like the Japanese developer that was at the GDC. And, he asked about like, I noticed a lot of games, y'all have like such respect for Japanese retro games. What would you say about Japanese games today? And Phil Fish was like, look, Japanese games, they suck. They trash and y'all got to get with the times and all of that. And that was some wild shit to say. Like, that was just... It was disrespectful, like, and I don't want to shit on Phil Fish, the man been through a lot, but it says something like all the top tier Japanese creators, they still in the game making classics, and he hadn't done nothing since 2008 or whatever.
That's a very bot answer.
You say what?
That was a very bot-like answer. Like, to say that Japanese games suck, like...
Well, he was talking about from, like, the 2006 era, 2000 era, like the old... like top of PS3. And, I will say this. The console RPGs from that era, most of them were not very good.
Yeah.
And I will say from my perspective, JRPGs was my thing. I ain't like it. Like, it was upsetting for everybody to be like, oh, all the good RPGs on portable. Like, hey, bro, like, I got my shiny new HD console. I got my shiny new toy. I want to play good JRPGs on my shiny new toy like everybody else. They want to play their shiny ass FPS games and action games and shit. I want to play my shiny JRPGs. And they was like, you can play them, but they trash. And it's like, what's up, Terrence?
I was gonna say Devin will remember this. I remember like early on in the PS3 360 console generation, where like the only JRPG that came out like early on was Eternal Sonata. You remember that?
Yep.
I have that.
Actually,
I mean, there was
actually,
other games, but Eternal Sonata was like the one that I just remember off the top of my head being like one of
Me
the
and
only
Devin
ones.
Me and Devin talked about one that was older than that.
Enchanted, I think Enchanted Arms.
Yeah,
It was
Enchanted.
like
Yeah,
the
I do remember
first one.
Enchanted Arms. Yeah,
Mhm.
that was like the first. That was a launch title, wasn't it?
I believe, for
Or close to
360,
like
I
one
think it
launch
was.
window 360 title.
Was that
Yeah.
FromSoft? That was FromSoft.
It
Yeah,
was from Soft.
Was it?
you
Mhm.
remember
Damn.
FromSoft was kind of ass until Dark Souls came out. Like
They made
They were.
well, they made
Armored
Armored
Core.
Core.
That shit was ass. The Armored Core games, you go back and look at the Metacritic scores, review scores, all them FromSoft games used to get hella low scores for years. And then they finally hit on something with Demon Souls. But I'm getting off topic. You know, this, you know, all that stuff, the 6th gen stuff, the way the games media acted back then, it was out of control. But I also feel like we can't get rid of the JRPG term altogether, like I've seen online.
Yeah.
Like, this is a personal thing, but without JRPGs, I wouldn't be gaming today. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I seen all your Super Marios and your Sonics and your Zeldas, and that shit was cute. But like, I was on my way out of gaming. Like, I was about to grow out that shit. Like, I was, I played games like everybody else as a kid, but it was a minor interest. I cared more about comic books and anime. And then one day I saw, like Will, Super Mario RPG. And then not long after that, I saw Final Fantasy VII, and that was it. And for a generation and a half, I only wanted to see where RPGs were, and really on console, it was just JRPGs. So I only wanted to see JRPGs. And it was like late PS2 before I even tried to get anything that wasn't a JRPG. It's a term for me that I have a lot of positive attachments to, and I don't want to just give it up just to say RPG. It's like some people online, they want to give up the term gamer because of the unwashed masses that just want to be assholes. I feel like, first off, we too far gone to be giving up those terms. And then more importantly, I don't want to just give them up to like negative crowds. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But for me, JRPG, it means a bunch of things. My most controversial opinion on this is going to be that for me, JRPGs are made by Japanese developers. All this, we're making a JRPG, and the team is a bunch of white dudes named Tanner and Skylar and all that shit. Them JRPG lights, they not JRPGs to me. I know to a lot of people they are, but to me, they not JRPGs. They JRPG lights.
They can be
And before you-
JRPG inspired.
It can be JRPG inspired.
Yeah.
They are not JRPGs to me.
Just like
And before-
Avatar is like inspired by
Anime
anime.
inspired, but that's
yeah.
not anime.
Not anime.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
And before somebody says anything about racism, I'm gonna tell you right now: if you assemble a team of any collection of ethnicities, and I don't see some Japanese people in prominent positions, that shit not a JRPG to me personally. Other folks might disagree. That's up to them. But to me personally, it's not a JRPG. The more important thing though is like a JRPG, just like Will said, is telling you its own story. It generally isn't about letting you tell your story. It has an existing protagonist, an existing supporting cast, and you see the story through the eyes of those characters. And, lastly, it might have an anime aesthetic. That's not really required. You got games like Final Fantasy or something, like new, not very good, but new, like Redemption Reapers. Even though to me, I feel like that's a little bit limiting in terms of what we define as anime aesthetics. I feel like that's still like Final Fantasy is still anime as fuck to me. Anime used to look a lot of different ways. It didn't just look one way. And like, to me, that's still anime. And Redemption Reapers is still anime. But that's neither here nor there. And then, of course, like Terrence said, JRPG music, it's got that grand hype music and grand sweeping music and shit like that. Like, I always
Battle
have good
themes.
memories. Great battle themes. Like, I've been telling Keem about that Cold Steel 4 battle theme for like months. I'm not even playing that game anymore. I'm still talking about how great that theme was. Like, when I think about that theme, and I'm not gonna say his name because his name is out of control, but when I think about that theme, I'm like, man, I just start thinking about the guitar and getting hype, and I'm like, I just want to fight someone. I'm like, yeah, let's go. And like that kind of stuff, there are very few. When I think about Western games and they music, a lot of times I'd be like, If you don't like God of War's music, no, it's all right. It's all right. Like, if I'm gonna have some music on my computer that comes from a video game, it's probably gonna be a Japanese game, and it's probably gonna be a JRPG. So those are the things that I always say to all kind of check the box for a JRPG. Devin, what would you say defines a JRPG?
Okay, so what I think defines a Japanese rocket propelled grenade.
I should have seen that coming.
I know.
For those of y'all don't know, that's one of my I call JRPG. I call RPGs that rocket propelled grenades. But yeah, the first and foremost would be it's an RPG developed by a Japanese developer. That's like the surest fire way to just put that category on it. But you know something that I just thought about that actually really for me over the years that has differentiated itself from Western RPGs, and of course I'm going to say other things, but this one I just thought about cutscenes, CG cutscenes. Think about is there any Western RPGs that really have cutscenes like that, like early on?
Yes. Now, you said early on?
Early on, no.
Early on in particular.
So
Now
like
nowadays
PS1,
I know
PS2, no, not that I remember.
so that's what I'm getting at. Like back when I want to preface this first off, going back to Pokemon. You know, that's weird because Pokemon was technically my first RPG I played.
Same.
I say Final Fantasy VII, but really it was Pokemon that actually was a catalyst for me getting into RPG. Because I look back like that was an RPG, that was a turn-based RPG. It was Pokemon. But the most impactful one on me was obviously FF7. Terrence he hit on this, the style of it. JRPGs just have this style, like just this sense of style, like the character designs, the hair, the swords, the weapons, the attacks. You got games like Tales, like and he mentioned anime. These games, there is just like Tales Symphony. It was like hand drawn cutscenes and stuff. It had an anime style to it. So when I look at Western RPGs, it's basically like Call of Duty. For a lot of the early ones, like let's say Fallout. It's like looking at Call of Duty. It was like Call of Duty, the RPG counter, like post-apocalyptic Call of Duty. Like it had the gunmetal gray colors. And what Will said earlier, I actually do agree that when you play like traditional JRPGs, it is more of a set, like I guess for lack of a better term, a linear story, which makes sense. If you have a story and you're writing a story, you need to just go ahead and tell that story, let it play out, right? Now, Western RPGs do have that as well. Like something like Oblivion, it has a story, like a legit story that it's telling. But this is the kicker, I think, that they tried to like make a difference with. Notice what was one of the big things with like Western games around like the early time of like even PS2 and early like PS3, big open world sandbox of Grand Theft Auto. So that's like let's put this in our RPG. So I feel like that's kind of why they allowed like I had Oblivion 4 on PS3. And I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't the most hype about it. I was looking at it, I was like, this would be cool to play. I never played one, but when I got it, I was like, man, this ain't Final Fantasy, man. Like most every Western RPG I played, I'm like, this ain't Final Fantasy. This ain't that. This ain't Legend of Dragoon. This ain't Tales of Phony.
It ain't got that swag.
It ain't got that style,
it's
man.
It's just that certain kick to it. That like the design of the world and the characters and the cities and the monsters and stuff, it just ain't got that kick to it.
It's just a little bit of that seasoning, you know.
Yeah, put some of that paprika on there, man. Yeah. You know? But yeah, like the villains, like just like even like with FF7 remake, just like the world fighting Rufus on like you just don't really to me get stuff like that in Western RPGs, in my opinion. Now I will say don't think that I don't like them. There is one that is my favorite. Fable 1, the expansion, I forgot what the expansion was called, but that was a freaking good RPG. I ain't gonna lie, Fable don't fell off from its glory, but Fable 1 was a heck of a game. I have to give it to that game. I played that game all the way through. Like that game was freaking fire. And even Jade Empire. Jade Empire was another pretty interesting game. It was like early on the Xbox. It was another attempt at BioWare trying to make like a MMO-ish RPG. It was pretty solid. But it's just they don't hit like them JRPGs, man. Like I like Sage. He's prefaces saying like all of us on this panel play some RPGs. All of us, JRPGs particularly, we play some RPGs. Legend of Dragoon, Final Fantasy VII, 8, 9, 10, 12, Tactics. A lot of these games, Batten Kato, Xenogears, Xenosaga. Like we play RPGs around here, and it just really don't compare to me. And I might be a little biased on it. I feel like all of us might be biased, but it just I know that you got great games. Like my brother's a big fan of Fallout. He likes Skyrim, and that's just. But he actually he's a fan of those games too, like Final Fantasy, because he got me into those. He got me into RPGs. You got games like Mass Effect. I know people like those. like I would consider Witcher more of like a Western style like action RPG. But when it comes to them JRPG, like the turn-based combat, that's another thing. That turn-based combat is just like I remember being in school and like a lot of people like, man, I can't play RPGs, man. I'm sitting on one side of the screen waiting for this. I'm like, bro, like, it's just like
I especially know what Devin's talking about because we went to the same school, so I know where he's coming from.
Me and Terrence over there, we caught, man, we were playing Final Fantasy, man. Final Fantasy XVI, that's whack. Like, excuse me? Like, you playing Madden? Oh, okay. You playing a different type of RPG.
I mean,
which is a role playing. It's technically a role playing game, But yeah, the JRPGs, man, that to me, that's my biggest. I would say to me personally, the cutscenes, because I remember just the cutscenes in 7. Of course, they've aged like old avocados, but 8 hadn't aged as bad. But when I first saw the cutscenes in 7, the cutscenes in 8, when I first saw this for the first time, I'm just like, bro, like they would just have these cuts from gameplay to now telling the story with this like really brief cinematic, like, and you just like, whoa, these visuals, like there's real people on the screen. Oh my goodness. Like I remember FF9, like the part I think when you were fighting Zidane, it was like we had this tree. I forgot what that tree was called, but you like the vine started growing and Zidane was like running along the vines and stuff. You run out the forest when his homeboy got turned to stone, like stuff like that, bro. Like you just sitting there like, bro, please don't stop the game. Please don't stop. I just want to keep playing. So, to me, it's just that flair, the presentation. Like I said, the style, the combat is usually a lot more. It's just like a lot more creative, Like you got the Tales game, they got like the combo attacks. You do the combo arts and all this stuff. Man, Western RPGs, they got some good ones, but like Sage said,
All right, whoa. Don't throw me under the bus.
I mean, you did say you was like, no, you said about the music. My bad. You said the music.
Right, music.
Which I do agree on that too.
Western music, I'd be like, Western RPGs, I mean, like The Witcher 3 was good. There's a soft spot in my heart for Kingdoms of Amalur. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, especially. So I do like a lot of Western RPGs. Dragon Age Inquisition. I like a lot of them. You're not gonna just throw one under the bus to like prop up the other. I'm not gonna let Western media and all that. I'm not gonna let y'all do that. I will say Devin hit on to something.
Me personally, I mean, but it's also a lot. But it's also a lot more JRPGs than. So it may not be fair though. So it's also way more JRPGs than Western RPGs.
I will say, Devin, I feel like you say what, King?
You think that, but go on PC and you'll see plenty of Western.
Well, actually, you might be right about it because I didn't start playing PC stuff until a lot later in my life. So
same.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I will say Devin hit on something. I like a lot of Western RPGs, like I was saying, but the villains in Western RPGs, they usually trash.
Yeah.
JRPGs make those top tier beatery chewing villains that make a video game. Luca Blight from Suikoden 2, my boy Kefka from Final Fantasy VI, Sphero from Final Fantasy VII,
Seymour Guado,
Lunar. My name isn't Galleon, it's Magic Emperor Galleon. Like, yeah, let's fucking go. Keem gonna know about this one. Gilead Osborne from Cold Steel. Let's write the end of this twisted fairy tale. Black as despair. Like, oh shit, let's fucking go.
Albedo from Xenosaga.
Yep.
Yeah.
Boy from Legend Dragoon.
Malos from Xenoblade 2. Like, people make fun of JRPGs for being over the top and silly, but it's because they are over the top that they can give you great villains that stick with you long afterwards. Like Dragon Age Inquisition, people like that game, but you know what the first thing they say is, man, that villain sucked. And like, even once you get the real villain, it's like, why did I have to wait to the DLC to get the real villain? This shit kind of ass. Like, as good as that game is, and I love that game, but like the villain of that game is not memorable. I don't remember the dude's name, but like, look at all the villains we named just like that from JRPGs. And, we could name more if we sat here and really just talked about it for a minute. So like, that's, like, it's not that bad. Rakeem, how do you feel about JRPGs?
Well, I'm gonna say one thing. It's gonna be hard to follow you, gentlemen, but I'm gonna try my best.
Oh, you gonna kill it.
Oh man, I'm doing my best, man. When I think of Japanese role-playing games, as we have all spoken this specific genre of RPG has a special place in our hearts, and it has a special place in my heart as well. I think of these games as a combination of taking good elements from various games and implementing them in various ways, whether it's puzzles, exploration, combat. It takes elements from different games and mashes them together to convey their story. Now, as we've talked to before, Western RPGs and Japanese RPGs have differences. When I think of Western RPGs, you guys have done a good job talking about the differences, but one thing I think about Western RPGs is that the reason they kind of feel a little more mild and timid is that they're really trying to get you to get into the tone of the world. The world is the most important part of that story. Once they get you into the world, they got you. So they don't want you ever to get out of it. There's a big focus on immersion. Whereas in Japanese role-playing games, it's like they want to show you the theme and they're going to crank it up to 11 and they're going to excite you and entice you to watch it. It's a very different approach to get the gamer into it. And I think because of that, people kind of have a stronger attachment to like how to introduce to Japanese role-playing games. I think precisely of like bombing mission in Final Fantasy VII, one of the most memorable things in my gaming life, that train coming down, the zoom in on Midgar City, Aerith walking down the street with the flowers. Unforgettable. I'd never forget that. I remember that scene. And when they redid it in Final Fantasy VII Remake, I almost cried. Like, it was so good. And that's the type of things like most Western RPGs do not do. I will shout out BioWare because they have a good system of kind of making some cinematic stuff. I think they took some inspiration from Japanese RPGs and Western RPGs in that regard. What you about to say?
You know, it's funny. BioWare actually kind of had a beef with JRPGs. They were the ones because they kind of came up at the time the JRPGs was kind of console JRPGs kind of on the way down. And I remember the creator of BioWare had like some stuff to say, like, man, you know, they just don't know how to keep up with the times and this and that. And I'm like, man, if you could see yourselves now, like y'all hadn't had a good game in about 10 years. And we're literally 10 years since the last good game was Inquisition, and that game came out 2014. So, and I mean, like, it did have that one scene, like you said, like that scene with Skyhold and the song and all that. That was cold. But other than that, you know.
Yeah. And I love Mass Effect personally. So I have a perspective, a general perspective. I'm just like Sage. I have a fondness for Western RPGs as well. But I have a good comparison to this was I like playing my little brother. We played RPGs together sometimes. So Western RPG that me and him love was Divinity Original Sin 2. I'm bringing this RPG up over and over again on the podcast over the years. That's for a reason. The game is fantastic. But the reason I talked to him about it, we were starting the game out. Divinity Original Sin 2 specifically has a very interesting system where you can either choose to create a character or have a set character with a background, story, voice acting, the whole shabazz. And my brother talked to me, he's like, why would you not want to have your own created character? And I instantly realized the influence of Japanese role-playing games on me. It was like, no, I want a character that I can explore their story and go through their story.
Something defined.
Exactly. And that's really the difference. That conversation I had with my brother is the difference. Like, creating your own story is the big part of the Western RPG mindset. The created character system, why the customization is so emphasized. Why it's lower down the themes and more into like the world. They want you to just be a part of the world, like you're a part of the world, like you're important. Whereas like for me, I was excited by, hey, what is this character? Where did they come from? Why are they like this? And of course, like as a Final Fantasy fan, the combination of unlikely characters working together towards a common goal, which to me is the definition of Final Fantasy. We get that into that later. That's the definition of Final Fantasy to me. That's the type of story I want to see. And that's what JRPGs provide. They want you to provide a story of, hey, we got these unlikely characters. They all have set defined roles, backgrounds, information. They're going to come together and go through a combined role. We have this story for you, and we're going to show you it along the way. A good comparison is also with MMOs. If you're not familiar with MMOs, they're like different types of MMOs where you have theme park MMOs and sandbox MMOs. Whereas a sandbox MMO is more of the open world type. You're more player freedom, more things to do. You know, you more creative, crafting, all that stuff. A theme park MMO is like, we're going to take you on a ride in this MMO. It's more instant. It's more cinematic, more bombastic.
Yep.
Think of a Japanese role-playing game as a theme park MMO. It wants to take you on that ride. It wants to, and while you're on that ride, take you through the twists and turns and keep you excited and keep it tight. And that's really the big difference for me. They like Japanese games really like to take those themes and crank them up. They want to tell one complete story more so than have you create your own story. And then on top of that, they also they mix in themes of like West with East, which is really cool. So you'll see like the D&D influence of the West that all RPGs have because of the origin of Dungeons and Dragons. But they'll like, hey, on top of that, this is our Japanese influence. Whereas in the West, you kind of see D&D and, well, it came from the West, so D&D and D&D instead of D&D in Japanese D&D. So that's how I see Japanese role-playing games.
See, I told you crush it.
There you go.
And, you know, as you said it, we do now have to talk about Final Fantasy 16. We got our first extended look at 16, and the opinions online have been pretty varied. I know my opinion might not. Actually, I have spoken about this with most of y'all, so I do know that our opinions might coincide a little bit more. That's why we have a podcast. But I do want to see where everybody is. I want to touch base, see what y'all think. How much of the footage have you seen? It's like 45 minutes of different cutscenes, boss fights, and stuff. It's split across some people. It's split across videos, and some of it is like a supercut. What have you seen and what have you thought so far? How does it look to you?
Well, if I just had to kind of point out the one thing I know we've all kind of said is that most of what they've shown us is really just kind of battles. So seeing a lot of that, I'm like, this game looks gorgeous. It looks fluid. It looks amazing. And I'm glad they got the guy who did the combat for DMC5. I'm glad they got him because he knocks it out. And I like what I'm seeing, but I'm just kind of like, I want to see a little bit more. I want to see a little bit more. And I just feel like maybe it's probably a case of, oh, it's Final Fantasy. You're going to get a world. We're going to show you a world. I mean, the guy who's really over this whole game did 14. You're going to get a world. So I'm just like, I really don't know what to say to that. It's more like, we want to show you we doing something new. And I like this new thing they got. I have nothing against it because I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan. So let's see what they talking about when they get around to showing us stuff before the game comes out, which is in like, what, 3 or 4 months from now?
Yeah,
it comes out in June.
Yeah, it
three,
comes out
so
June.
about 3 then. So 3 months from now, we should be seeing something more, or maybe something before that. We should see a little more, especially learn more maybe about the characters, even if they haven't given us everything on that.
I'll go. I think it's fine. You know, Final Fantasy is never my favorite franchise, even though it is responsible for making me a super fan. It was never my favorite. I was always Suikoden, Lunar. There were always something other that I like enjoyed a little bit more than Final Fantasy, but it has become one of the only franchises remaining, aside from maybe Persona, where you're gonna get super high production values. You know, it's one of the last ones. Like, I can't think of too many. Like, somebody in the comments may be able to think of some. Maybe y'all can think of some. But to me, it's basically just Final Fantasy and Persona, and everything else really not getting them high production values. So
probably Tales, maybe.
I mean,
the last one
I would say Tales of Arise is the first one where it feels like they really put some effort into it. But if you really look at Tales of Arise, it's not up to the same level as
there we go.
Square
as somebody that put a lot of hours into Tales of Arise, it's not of the quality of your average Final Fantasy. It is probably not. I haven't really played Persona like that, but I have seen, cutscenes and clips and shit. I doubt it's of the same quality of Persona. They did seem like they were trying more, so I agree with y'all on that.
Bandai Namco actually gave a shit this time.
It felt like they gave a shit. I just wish they gave more of a shit so that we didn't wind up with a piece of shit. Anyway, when a new mainline Final Fantasy gets announced, I pay attention. The big issue is that, just like Will just said, we're like 3.5 months away. And once again, like, we've seen it before. We've seen little snippets of gameplay. And, every time it's been combat. And, here now we've seen 45 minutes of it. And once again, they're hyping up a combat. And I'm like, yo, man, shut up about your fucking combat. Like, I don't know. Like, people can get mad at me and talk, oh, combat is important. Let me tell you something. The Witcher 3 was the defining RPG of last generation. And the first thing people say about it is that its combat sucks. Its combat fucking sucks, supposedly, but that didn't stop it from selling 50 fucking million copies. And I'm not saying Final Fantasy 16 is The Witcher 3 or that it should be The Witcher 3, but like, they talking, you got I think Yoshida said this where he was like, yeah, I feel like a lot of kids, we lost the generation to like COD and GTA. Yeah. And I'm like, hey man, that's not what I want to hear when you trying to like grab a new audience. Like Witcher 3 was not trying to get COD and GTA fans. All right. Dragon Age was not trying to get COD and GTA fans. Like, I'm not saying this got to be Witcher 3, which is open world, and this is not open world. I know that. I don't want nobody this super fan of Final Fantasy coming at us in the comments. I know. But I would have wanted.
I'll come back.
I know, right? But I would have wanted Final Fantasy to take inspiration from games that were big RPGs rather than focus on fast-paced combat. The side quests, the characters, the story, those are what make an RPG, JRPG or Western RPG to me. And we still talking about the fucking combat. I'm not saying the game cannot be good. The combat looks amazing and the graphics are solid. And I think Keem has told me that they're supposedly showing exploration and more stuff in the months to come, probably next month. I'm definitely way more interested in that because at the moment, as a friend of ours used to say, I'm trying to play an RPG. And I'm more excited about Trails into Reverie because that, like Keem said, like that's a game that is not ashamed of being a JRPG. It's not ashamed of being an RPG. It's not trying to prove nothing to nobody. It's like, look, you know what we are, and if you want it, come play it. And that's what I want. I don't want all this shit where they like, oh, we trying to get a new audience. Like, look, you better be careful because if you try to chase two birds, you fuck around and catch neither. What you gonna do then? Rakeem, how do you feel about Final Fantasy 16?
I got a lot to say. I'm gonna keep it short though. Yep. You talked about Witcher 3 was the defining RPG of last generation. The defining JRPG of last generation was Persona 5. Facts. Persona 5 is a hardcore turn-based RPG. A JRPG. And people freaking loved it.
It is.
Facts. And for some reason, Final Fantasy has acted like they ain't those guys. How long y'all been doing this?
Talk.
30 years.
Go on.
What you talking about?
Preach.
You losing the audience. You should have never lost them. Damn, I thought you made 13. I thought some people like 13.
That's exactly the game that was on my mind. Boy.
It ain't our fault that 15 was incomplete and in development for 10 years.
Talk your shit, son.
I'm sorry. I just want an RPG experience. And from the guys who built the ground of Japanese role-playing games. Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, Star Ocean, Mana, Saga. Like, it's too much.
They built both halves. Both halves. This is not Squaresoft no more. This is Square Enix. Dragon Quest was the first JRPG, the first console RPG ever, and then Final Fantasy came along and did the rest. So they did both halves. So you double right.
It doesn't make any sense. They still made Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest 11 did well. Studio Sino just made Octopath Traveler and Octopath Traveler 2. It's doing well. Bravely Default, they were surprised. Oh, y'all still like these games? I will still put them out. They got a side studio that makes hardcore RPGs, and for some reason, they have an aversion to hardcore. Okay. But going back to the original subject, I had to get that out of my way. This doesn't make any sense. I was a little concerned. Now, I do like some good combat now. I was a Devil May Cry fan. Devil May Cry 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. I like good, fast-paced combat, but this is an RPG game. And when I talked about in the last part of this podcast is that RPGs take elements of multiple games. Now, a person who's just an action game fan, like, oh man, this might be the best Final Fantasy ever because it has this action. To me, I'm like, but that's only one part of the puzzle. We still have to get the exploration. We still have to get the story. Now, I will say one thing I do like is this game does seem like it's more focused than 15 was. Like, they knew what direction they wanted to take it in. They just stuck with it, which ultimately, for better or worse, it's still better than what they did with 15. It was all over the place, and it ended up with a half-baked product.
The RPG version of Justice League.
Exactly.
They had to hand it off to a whole other director and shit.
Exactly. And that was one of my big disappointments of last year. Like, they fumbled the bag, and there was a lot of good ideas in 15 too. That I think the world exploration, open world, was actually very well done, but they just didn't put it all together. This feels like they didn't want to pull a 15. They just wanted one direction and just go with it. However, the direction of like hardcore action combat can come with a cost if you don't caveat it with the good world building, the storytelling, the quest design that we're used to, and not just used to, has been expanded upon by games that we spoke about, like The Witcher 3, like Divinity Original Sin 2, which I will keep bringing
Like
up
Persona,
over and over
like you
again.
said.
Like Persona. Those games have innovated now, and now it's like you're trying to innovate on the combat and you're de-innovating on everything else. There has to be a balance of that. And I mean, I'm hopeful that there is still, because from what I saw in interview excerpts, there's supposed to be some exploration, a hub area, side quests, questing, all that stuff. And I'll be honest though, like playing 15 a few years ago, I still don't think they figured out questing quite yet. Like the questing that was done in Witcher 3 and how it was innovative to the entire RPG genre, no one has really caught up to it yet. They've tried. Like I think Odyssey was on that level.
Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey kind of was close. That's because they really were inspired by it. And Japanese Final Fantasy in particular kind of wants, like we talked about earlier, really is focused on that story, and the side quests are really side quests. They really put it to the side. I wish they would take more inspiration from things. I mean, they do. I wish they would take more inspiration from things like Yakuza. Like, you know how Yakuza has a... People who like Yakuza know that the side stories are almost like the meat and potatoes of that game, because they're so out there, interesting. They do ideas that no one would go. Places, I mean, seriously, no one would ever go there, and maybe they shouldn't. But they take risks with their side quests, and they have fun with their side quests. Final Fantasy, I hope, goes in that direction. But for this game in particular, I just want to see more of how is this world coming together? How do I explore this world? When I quest, what is the meaning behind it? How will I learn more about Clive? I will say this is going through this guy's whole life, the main character's whole life. That means we'll probably get a pretty good idea of his character and how deep it goes and how interested he'll be. I think he'll be fine. The rest of the cast, we'll see about that. But those are my concerns. Like the combat thing, I like combat. Combat look cool. I like switching between the summons, the boss battles. That's cool. But like, if you have a big cake and it's pretty, you still got to have some strong layers underneath. Okay, I got one question real quick, and then next I'm going to ask Terrence. But I want to ask y'all, how do y'all feel? I don't know if anybody saw this comment. Somebody was, one of the people working on the game was like, I don't know if we could have like a blitzball, we at war. And people was like, what? Like Final Fantasy X was serious as hell, and they still had blitzball. Like, what y'all
the world
talking
was
about?
ending.
Blitzball was like a celebration to take the minds off of an in-game event. Sin.
People,
like a monster
they was like,
destroyed the world.
Yeah,
I see people said the game was about like death. I never played Final Fantasy X, but it was just like, I know how often people talk about
Definitely
blitzball,
is.
and it was like, man, Final Fantasy X is a game about death, and they still have blitzball.
Really
like,
is.
why you bringing up war? Like, of course it's war, but like people still, what's up?
What did I just say? Y'all been doing this 30 years, and somehow y'all just forget about all the stuff y'all did in the past, like it just didn't happen.
They're trying to be too realistic,
I don't get it, man.
Real. It gotta be real.
Zelda don't have this problem. They remember exactly where they came from, and they just build on it. Mario don't have this problem. They just build on it.
What's up, Devin?
I don't know. It just seems weird to me. Like you had Triple Triad. You had
Now
like,
they didn't say they wouldn't have like any mini games. They just said like something like Blitzball. We couldn't do that because it's like a serious war. And I'm like, I hope y'all lying. Like they could still be lying to people.
Yeah,
so hopefully
it's called Final Fantasy though. It's like it's a video game. Like those things, like Blitzball was thing, but it wasn't like, oh well, the main main bad guy's named Sin. We can't have nothing here. Well, Blitzball is one of the best things ever.
For real.
And that's a testament to how they just used to do what they did, and they did it well. Like Blitzball could have been its own thing to itself. It was that freaking good. Then they mess it up in 10-2 by making it like Minesweeper or something. I don't know. Like
Terrence, how do you feel about Final Fantasy 16,
bro? So okay, I'm gonna speak on the pros first. For one, yes, the game looks good. Like I think graphically it looks great. Even though I will admit that the gameplay demonstration they gave us, I wish it wasn't in such a dark area because
dark.
It was hard. It was so damn
Couldn't
dark.
see nothing.
For real. It's like, why would you show your game off this way? That's so That's a choice. We'll see.
That's why at the start of every game I cut the brightness all the way up.
Exactly.
It's like, I mean, that's a choice, but I mean, we'll see how it pays off for you. But anyway, the game looks good. It looks how I would expect a high budget Final Fantasy game to look, or just a high budget Square Enix game. You got your particle effects that look great, movement, everything just looks fluid. But I mean, that's what I expect from Square Enix when they're putting their best into a game. The combat, combat looks great. I'm not going to say too much about it, but it is definitely a departure from what we've seen in previous Final Fantasies. But if we're being honest, Final Fantasy as a whole, each game has always had different style of combat. Whether it's still turn-based, it's different kinds of turn-based. 7 has your active time battles, and 8 kind of improves upon that, and 9 kind of goes back to more like a traditional turn-based, and then 10 adds other stuff to it, and then 12 goes in like an MMO direction. So it's Final Fantasy has always offered something different for each game. So it's not like they've always followed a formula. So 16 doing its own thing, that's fine. Doing its own thing with the combat, that's absolutely fine. And if it's great, it's great. Another positive that I'll give it is the voice direction for this game is really well done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really liking Clive and the characters that I've seen so far. Their voices sound really cool. It definitely has more of a Western tone to it. I will admit that in previous Final Fantasy games, the English direction, at least, is leaned more into not full on anime. I'm not gonna say anime. It still has its Japanese isms to the voice direction. I'll put it that way. I'm pretty sure most of us know what I'm getting at. But this one, it definitely feels more like Western grounded, kind of like a Witcher or like a Mass Effect. It just feels more real and less kind of fantasized in a sense. That might not be the best way to put it, but hopefully you all know what I mean.
I'm not sure if this is accurate or not, but I believe they said they voiced the English voice actors actually for the first time ever.
I heard that.
Japanese voice actors.
Wow.
I believe I heard that too. Is that I'm probably not going to explain that well. I mean, there's a whole video on it that you all can check out that Skill Up did, which is where the whole interview with Yoshi-P came from. But that essentially the game was like done in English, like the mocap was done like in English, and they like dubbed it over to like match the Japanese voices. Like I said, I'm not really explaining that well, but that's ultimately how it's done.
It makes sense.
Yeah, that the English I think was done first. So that is a first, and we're actually starting to see that more with some Japanese games. Is that they're going the English? They're going after the English translation first, and then kind of letting the Japanese side of it get done afterwards. So which is interesting. Like you all have said, I am concerned about exploration in the world. And Sage, you mentioned it not being open world. Yeah, I actually didn't know that until today when I watched that full interview that, Yoshi-P said straight up that it's not open world, but there are big segments that you can go through that are kind of like intertwined and that you go from place to place. I'm very interested to see how that works, because that's the thing with this game. And if we really think about it, out of all the previews that they've shown us, they've never shown a character on like a world map just walking around. I mean, think of something like Xenoblade. Xenoblade, like one of the first demonstrations they show is a character walking around this big map, and like your camera pans around, you see this whole world.
You see multiple environments.
Yeah, usually with a JRPG, that's what you see, is like you see a character in like this environment, and the camera pans around, and there's this big world that you get to explore. 16, we haven't seen that. We've seen combat and like linear corridors, and that's in cutscenes. That's pretty much it. So I am concerned that they haven't shown us that, but hopefully that just means that it'll knock us out when they do show us what the exploration looks like. So I am hopeful, but there is cause for concern. And lastly, my main issue, I'm really hoping that Square is not trying to make this, and all of you have kind of spoken on this in this sense, especially Rakeem. I'm really hoping that they're not trying to make this too much of a Western game. Like, look, I get it that you're wanting Final Fantasy to, Yoshi-P wants Final Fantasy 16 to be something different than the other ones. I get that. There's nothing wrong with that. I like his ambition. He's free to do that. But at the same time, don't take away what makes Final Fantasy in terms of what people have loved about it over the decades, to be honest, in the hopes to try and make it more appealing to people who like GTA and COD. Because it's like, on one hand, I get it. Each game, what were you going to say, Sage? Or both of you got something?
The one thing that sticks with me with that whole GTA and COD thing is, do you know what the people who played video games but didn't play GTA and COD were playing?
Final Fantasy.
Final fucking Fantasy, exactly. That's all I had.
What are you going to say, Will?
I definitely.
What I was gonna say is this: you've been doing this for over 3 decades, 35 because of the rhythm game that came out, the Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line. That's the big celebration. It brings in all of that. In 35 years, I feel like this: if you haven't reached that crowd at this point, you will not reach them. So at this point, I get it. You want to bring in some fresh blood to see the game, but if they don't buy it, it's not your fault at this point. But I will say it's your fault for trying to go over into that that demographic. That's the word I was looking for. If you're trying to hop into that demographic at this point in time, 35 years of making nothing but this game, sequel after sequel after sequel, spin-off, tactical games, this and that, everything in this, that, and the third. If you hadn't reached them by this point, you won't.
Yeah. And you know, and before somebody says anything like, "Oh, you all are such purists, you want them to only be after JRPG fans," like, no, look, if Final Fantasy can reach those people, that'd be great. But I don't think that should be like the end goal, to like solely try and get the COD and GTA crowd. Like, I don't know, I just don't see that panning out that well for it. We could be totally wrong. Who knows? When the game comes out, it could be the most amazing thing ever, and everybody buys it. It sells 60 million copies, and Yoshi-P is like laughing at everybody. It's like, "Ha, you laughed at me. You all called me crazy. I was a genius all along." But it's just, I don't know. I just don't like the idea of Japan trying to be more like the West, like letting the West influence kind of overpower what makes them unique in and of themselves. That's just my take on it. It's like, I just hope that Final Fantasy just doesn't become that game. That's all. Keep
okay,
what.
So
yeah.
No. Go ahead. Finish up.
No, that's pretty much it. It's like, I just hope that it doesn't, try and be too different. That's all. There's nothing wrong with change. Change is good, but don't try and veer too off the path that what you make is something that's just unrecognizable to old fans, in my opinion.
All right, 2 things. One, this thing of trying to chase Western games, y'all did that already.
The PS3's 360 generation.
Y'all tried that. And you know
that's
what
how we got
said?
stuff like Bionic Commando.
Everybody was like, "We don't want this shit. We want y'all to be y'all. We want you to be you." So, like, if you try to chase with these, and first off, people don't even like a lot of Western games now. Like, even the games that's getting like good reviews, they be like, "Hey, man," they be talking about trash about the Last of Us and trash about God or whatever. Be like, "Hey, man, get these sad dad games the fuck out of here. I'm trying to play something weird and cool and anime like, and I'm trying to punch a god in the mouth and all of that. And I don't need no dude being so sad about all the crime and all the people I killed. Let's shut the fuck up and get to some fun shit." So, like, that's the first thing. And the second thing is, purists my ass. Like, I don't want to hear nothing about y'all some Japanese JRPG purists. No, the fuck I'm not. Like, if you want to make changes to the combat, that's fine. Like, my problem is not that you've made changes to the combat. My problem is that that's the only thing you've shown. Like, that's not supposed to be the only thing. Like, by now, 3 months out. I can't stress this enough. It's not like we 2 years off. When we was a year off and you was showing combat, I was like, I guess, like, that's the first thing you're supposed to, like, combat can be shown really quickly. So if you showing a 90-second trailer and you just like, this dude giving out the hands, like, okay, cool. But like, we 3 months out now, and it's time for the deep dives. And the first deep dive you gave us was deep hands. Like, I ain't asked for that. I want some story and some exploration and all that other stuff. Like, what is the priority here? Is the priority the story or is the priority the hands? So, like, I don't want to hear about no purists. Like, I'll use this as an example. Trails, and I know we talk about me and Keem talk about Trails a lot, but Trails in Japan recently, you say what, Keem?
I'm gonna keep talking about it.
You're right. Trails in Japan recently We behind, we forever behind by it. But like when they did Trails into Black or Trails into the Dark, whatever they're gonna call it, they switched and created a new system where you can switch between turn-based and action.
Yeah,
I have no problem with that.
No.
And most of the Trails say what, King?
like yeah, it's really fluid. You just go straight into it.
You can do either. And most of the Trails fan base is like, okay, cool. That's different. Do you know why? Because they still letting you know it's the same Trails game. It's everything you like about Trails, the deep world building, the fact that all the characters, like tie into different places, and you know where this side character came from because he was in 6 games ago, and they had this side quest, and oh yeah, this sky pirate that changed her life and turned it like a delivery service. You know all those people. Nothing changed about Trails, and so like when you change something like combat, everybody like cool. Like you can expand and grow and change in certain ways so long as you keep what makes you you. And like doing it this way is not like, and like Terrence said, could be that this is the way to go. And if all the stuff we saying that we're concerned about is straight, if it's all line, if he got his ducks in a row, it's gonna be fine regardless.
That's true.
Like if the writing is on point, if the character's on point, if the exploration is on point, it's gonna be fine regardless. It's gonna sell 15 million copies regardless. You're gonna be good. But it's okay for us to be like, I'm kind of concerned. I don't know if this is gonna be good. It's all right to say that. It's all right to be a little critical. Like, what's that saying that they say? If you tell the truth and you negative, you're a hater. If you tell the truth and you positive, you're a dick rider. Like, no bullshit. All I'm doing is telling the truth. It's okay to ring a little early warning alarm bell and be like, it's not, like, all we're really saying is maybe don't day 0 purchase this. Maybe wait, see what the review's talking about. Maybe wait, see, okay, everybody says it's lit. Now I can go get it. Not just, oh man, I pre-ordered it and I went dark and I don't want to look at no more footage and I don't want to know nothing about it. And then you buy the game, you like, this ain't what I wanted at all. Like, maybe don't do that. What's up, Terrence?
I'll put it this way. The game that I wanted to be that game for Spoken turned out to not be that game. So there's nothing more frustrating than rooting for a game and then it turns out to not be what you wanted it to be. Trust me, I know. And I probably will get Forspoken at some point, but it hurts, man. It just hurts. It hurts to have a game that you put your hopes in and it kind of lets you down. So yeah.
So Devin, you are, I would say, probably the most combat intensive fan here, aside from Rakeem. How do you feel? But you're also probably the biggest Final Fantasy fan because you like a huge Final Fantasy fan. So how do you feel about what you've seen from Final Fantasy 16 so far?
I just thought about it. It's actually weird. Like when I first heard of Final Fantasy 16 was a thing, I'm like, man, that's dope. I can't wait to see something on this. I'm so excited. And to take a slight step back, I'm pretty sure all of us can relate to this. Whenever a new Final Fantasy or new RPG or something you were hyped for was like announced, you're like, oh, I can't wait to see what this new world, these new characters, like what's going to happen. I mean, they're showing like the new character. They're showing like the little brother. They're showing like, okay, now they have summon power. They turn to the summons. I'm like, oh, that's pretty dope. And then they was, we got the guy that did Devil May Cry's combat on board. And they showed combat. The combat looked fire. But like everybody has said, Sage just drove that point on. Like, that's all they've shown. Like, so I don't want this to be like Devil May Fantasy. I don't want this to be Devil May Fantasy. And the biggest reason is because I know there might be like different groups and different people working on different stuff, but Final Fantasy VII Remake's battle system was quite all right. Like, yeah. I don't think there was any need to bring somebody like that. Battle system was like Kingdom Hearts battle systems. Like, expand upon that. I don't think there was a need, man. We got to go get a guy from Devil May Cry. Like, I don't really think there was a need. Now, let's say that every Final Fantasy up to this point had just been turn-based and like very like methodical, slow pace. He'd be like, hey, we're going to bring in some guy from some, okay. But you already had a really combo action-heavy combat system in FF7 Remake. And it was melded perfectly together with like choosing your attacks and stuff. Like, I don't think there was really a need for that. This game was cool. I will say though, if I didn't know this was Final Fantasy 16 and I looked at it, I would probably think, oh, this is The Witcher 4.
Our roommate
Or-
said that.
Like The Witcher,
said.
like like, and I know this world is like, it's more like the art style, the character is more like adjacent to Final Fantasy 14 kind of tactics. That world, this is more what the characters look like. They don't look like the super fantastical, crazy hair characters from like Cloud, or Lightning. I think there's nothing wrong with that. Again, like Terrence mentioned, the voice acting was phenomenal. Like that boss fight against, what was it? What was the bird summon? Garuda, like
or Garda, however you like to pronounce it.
the voice acting was fire, and the game looks dope. And if I'm being honest, at this point, graphics don't impress me with Square Enix, because that's what y'all known for.
That's a good point.
Final Fantasy 13, when that game came out, I was like, is this PS4? Because like it looked so good at that time. It's just crazy because I was playing on a fatback TV, which is odd enough. Like I got 13 right before I got an actual HD TV, my first HD TV ever. I was playing that game on a fatback, and I'm talking about it was struggle city. I was like this trying to read text, like what? Okay.
Oh yeah, I do remember those early days of PS3 where if you played them on like CRTVs, it's like it's like that meme from Community.
Bruh, when I got an HDTV, it was like I can see clearly. Like, so I'm not really. You can't. That's already a given. We know y'all presentation gonna be fire, so we just get that out of the way. Like Sage says, show some exploration, and then Terrence said, "Why y'all choose such a dark segment? Showing off for RPG, especially something like Final Fantasy, you should choose a location that's similar to like the Calm Lands or something out where it's like the lighting is sunlight, or like Final Fantasy 15's opening. That was a great example. That open world was, to me, dope. There was some problems with that game, but I think it was pretty solid. I mean, I wish it had to come out as the Royal Edition when it first started instead of piecemealing the game.
Definitely would have been better.
Like that was just like it just really kind of took the steam out of the game. And if you try to reach the other audiences like COD and GTA, y'all failed because Dirty Cerebus was that game and that failed. That was a shooting game and that failed. So you didn't do it then on PS2. Don't try to do it. Oh, we gonna make the Devil May Cry fans come in. No, you didn't do. You failed with Dirty Cerebus. Because as much as a Final Fantasy VII fan I am, I played that game because I just want no more story. But that game was trash. So y'all failed there. You didn't get it with the shooting. He was actually shooting. He the only kid that got it. Well, besides Barry, that got a gun. Y'all failed with that. So if you trying to get GTA audience and COD audience, you should have done the game where dude had a gun. They got swords in this one. I don't see nobody with no guns in this game. So, and also when you deviate sometimes from stuff, sometimes there's 3 instances I can think of that people deviated and were failures. And as Terrence just spoke of a game he was really hyped for Forspoken, I hope that game did well. And I feel so sorry for the actress. I'm blanking on her name right now, but Lord, please, whatever she's in next, I hope it's good because she's been in 2 dumpster fires so far. She was in Resident Evil on Netflix, hot garbage, and she was in Forspoken. So please. She seems like she's a beautiful woman. She seems like she's a pretty good actress. Please, her talents need to be in something good. Please, she can't have a 3rd dumpster fire because Resident Evil was just a travesty. And then I was hoping, man, Forspoken gonna come in there and be like, yeah, that's what she needs. Like, oh, you thought? So 3 instances, and I'm gonna pick one game that's not even an RPG. First game, Breath of Fire. Breath of Fire is another solid RPG, JRPG series. But there was one game that really kind of killed the series. And I'm pretty sure you already know what I'm talking about. The one on PS2, Breath of Fire 5, I believe, Dragon Quarter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I played it. It was okay. I like what it was doing because I'm a fan of Jet Set Radio, and it kind of had that cell shaded style. So I'm like, this look kind of cool. But it just like, and I actually played the earlier games like years later after Dragon Quarter. I was like, it's an RPG. Breath of Fire 3 and 4, like this is fire. And then I remember playing 5. I'm like, that's what y'all went to? Another game. I was hyped for last. Y'all know I was hyped for Callisto Protocol. They deviated from, you go low. It's supposed to be horror. Y'all deviated from that. Now you just doing this right here, swinging, move side to side and lean back, doing that. No, the game failed. I ain't gonna be a person like me. I love Dead Space and the creators. That game sucked. I'm gonna just be honest. I was gonna buy it. I ain't not gonna do it unless it gets fixed overall. I'm not buying it. Another example: NFL Tour. People love NFL Street. I'm pretty sure Rakeem has played NFL Street. Maybe Terrence. But that
Yeah,
and
NBA
people are
Street.
familiar with NBA Street, NFL Street.
Mhm.
First 3 games, dope. PS3 came around, NFL Tour. It killed the series because they tried to do something new. It's like if you have something that's working and people love it, and it has a solid enough of a foundation, there's no point to really change it. So I am a little concerned. I ain't gonna lie. I'm really for this to be the PS5 Final Fantasy. I'm not that hype. I'm not gonna even lie, man. I got Devil May Cry 5. I played it. That's a good game. I want Final Fantasy. I want Final Fantasy. I don't want Devil May Cry.
Mm.
I had that with Devil May Cry. I want Final Fantasy. So I don't know, man. I guess it's a new age of trying something different, but I don't know, man. I hope that this goes well because if this don't, you're gonna be like, hey, man, them COD and GTA fans. And again, them people don't care about nothing but COD and GTA. Can we stop, bro? Again, me and Terrence went to the same school when we was younger. People that played them games, literally, they didn't give 2 rats behinds about no doggone RPG. Man, you standing on the side of the screen waiting for him to hit you, man. Come on, man. I'm trying to go over there and punch him in the mouth. You
Hey, I remember when I told them about Beautiful Joe, they're like, what is this shit?
anything like creative and outside, but I don't want that, man. Go down the field, 5 and out, bro. Catch this touchdown real quick. They don't care about no fire 3 and no slogan and all that. They like, look, 25 kill streak, call it in right now. I don't know, man. Maybe he knows what he's doing, and I guess maybe that's why he felt so offended by being called a JRPG. But right now, I'm not the hypest. I ain't gonna lie. It looked cool, but I'm just like, and even the summon thing was kind of silly. It kind of gave me a feel of FF15. Like they didn't turn the summons, but in 15, the summons were just like huge Attack on Titan size. And we were talking about when we were watching it, just feel like a fantasy Attack on Titan like creatures. Like, oh, I'm gonna turn into a big monster.
They're essentially Jinchuriki from Naruto.
Yeah, that's actually the more better comparison. We out here got the 9 tails versus the 3 tails over here. Got doggone, like, come on, bro. I mean, 8 tails. But he might know it. This might sell 100 million copies. It might be the best Final Fantasy that the world has ever seen. But right now, it don't look like Final Fantasy to me. So I'm just gonna wait. Like I think Sage just said, look, I'm definitely not putting no money down for this just yet. I got to see more. 3 months away and we ain't seen nobody run across some grass. Like we ain't seen nobody walk inside a store and buy a potion or nothing. Hey man, what that shield go for? Oh, let me get that. Like, come on, man.
There you go.
That was a great closing, and like now I gotta ask y'all. We're gonna move away from Final Fantasy 16, and so now I gotta ask y'all. This we feel like isn't the right direction. It still may be. The game is not out yet. We haven't had a chance to play it. I cannot imagine. If I'm being 100% honest, I feel like the game is gonna turn out fine.
Yeah.
Mostly because it better turn out fine. This is the game y'all have been putting y'all everything behind. The only other thing you have to fall back on at this point is Final Fantasy XIV. Forspoken was a big game for y'all, and that didn't do what you needed it to do. It didn't perform well. I don't know how it sold. I'd have to go look, NPD charts and check out. I doubt that it performed great because new IP is already a hard sell.
And I believe the studio closed down too.
Square Enix absorbed them, didn't they?
They absorbed Luminous Productions into, so that in itself should tell you something. And then it was, to be honest with you, unless that game was like a 95 on Metacritic, it was never going to sell well for obvious reasons that we've talked about before. And it just didn't do itself no favors being a kind of game at best. So, but I can't imagine a world in which Final Fantasy 16 does bad, because if it does, Square Enix is in serious trouble. Like that, the mothership can't fail. Like the mothership, the main line, that shit cannot fall through now without you being into some trouble. So I feel like it's gonna be all right. But I still want to ask y'all, where do y'all think JRPGs should go next? Like, what would you want to see as like the evolution of JRPGs going forward? Rakeem, how do you feel?
This is kind of a tough question for me because, I feel like the best place for JRPGs is a little bit of everything, because we came from a generation we got a little bit of everything. We had action, combat, we had Western themed RPGs, we had sci-fi RPGs. They changed tone and graphics. It changed tone and storytelling. It changed tone and perception. We had RPGs that had military kind of things behind them. We RPGs that was very more straightforward. So variety is the spice of life. I think the innovations will come more so, I guess, on a technical side than on the gameplay perspective. I mean, of course, we're seeing some evolutions already with the combat in Final Fantasy. We're seeing things. I think what we'll really see the evolution is like RPGs that have done certain things for a while start taking some risks or changing the tone a little bit. Dragon Quest going darker as an example.
We'll see how that turns out.
We'll see how that turns out. That's just an
They
example
say
of that.
darker, but I bet we gonna see them adorable ass slimes and say all them cute ass animals from the Adventures of Die a bit.
Oh yeah. I think maybe something I would like just personally in Japanese RPGs, just more customization for the characters. Or it's 2023. We still have RPGs where people don't change their outfits when they change their armor or change the weapons don't change. I'm like, bro, it's 2023. That's something that should have been changed a long time ago. We might see more stuff with character creation maybe involved. That's not just something that people like. Although I don't necessarily need that. But I have liked what I've seen with Divinity, where it gives you both, where you can have a perspective like a story narrative from a created character, and you have set characters, and you can choose what side you want to go on to. And that worked out perfectly fine. They were even integrated together where the characters who were set were still in the story, and then with your side characters, you just didn't have that perspective when you played them, and it still worked out fine. So that's something I would like to see. As far as also evolution, I think it's time for some more big budget JRPGs.
Man,
put some money behind these things.
You stepping on my toes.
Like I was playing Star Ocean, and I like the new Star Ocean that came out. I like it. I played it. The combat's fine. I think it does a good job going back to its roots. But I was like,
Not enough money was put into it.
Man, this could have been so much better if they had gave it the Tales of Arise budget. Tales of Arise ain't perfect, but they put some money behind that game. I don't care what nobody says. They put some money behind it. If he even had that budget, the experience would be evolved a little bit. I think it's time, like with the rise of last year, for example. I talked with Sage and guys in the podcast about this. Last year was a big year for strategy RPGs. Like if you went on Steam, like every 3 months, it was like another strategy RPG came out. I kept seeing them back to back to back to back. I played a couple of them myself, and it seems like that's kind of a popular subgenre that came out. Of course, Fire Emblem was knocking out of the park for years and carrying that flag by itself for a while. So it's kind of cool to see the industry catch up. I kind of want to see more big budgets behind RPGs and strategy RPGs kind of make a comeback. And then you can tweak battle systems and stuff like that. I kind of miss the era where like you had limitations on your battle system, so you had to be more creative. I want to see creative battle systems again. Even if it's an action combat, mix it in with something. Like Legend of the God, one of my favorite RPGs of all time, was a turn-based RPG that used martial arts combat through directions. It was one of the most creative battle systems I've ever played. And then you would actually discover combos as you played by accident, just being creative. Stuff like that. More experimentation with combat systems, higher production values on these other companies. You got to step it up. Bandai Namco, you definitely can step it up.
Man, you get all up in my points, man.
I'm sorry, man. I was like, Bandai Namco. I'm being hard on Bandai Namco. But I will say, at least they're making RPGs like consistently again. They seem to making new IPs every freaking year. Like they're trying. Yeah. You know, Code Vein. What was that one with the psychic guys that came out?
Scarlet Nexus.
Scarlet Nexus. Kakarot. They got a couple RPGs out there that are playing around. So Blue Protocol coming out soon. So I want to see them like get one and put some money behind it. I want to see what y'all got. So that's something I want to see. I don't necessarily need high production values because I'm a JRPG fan, and I know, beggars can't be choosers in that genre. We take what we can get because these small companies can't do that. But if you couldn't do that, please do. That's what I want to see.
I'm gonna try not to step on Terrence's toes.
No, you can go ahead. I mean, I have others. I think we're all gonna probably talk about the same thing, but just say it in like a different way. So feel free, go ahead.
No, I feel like I'm gonna be a little off kilter. We'll see. First off, greed. Greed is the answer. That's why we haven't gotten character costumes, character weapon changes, and all that shit. It's greed. Because, like, whenever they really want to show off some costume changes, they put them in DLC and want you to pay extra $2.99 to get the swim. And then it's always whack
I'm
costumes.
looking at
That-
you,
that-
Tail series.
I was going to say
Look at
that's
Ariel.
the Atlas special. Will knows what I'm talking about.
Oh, I know about that too.
Yeah, it's
Atlas
always
like,
$2.99 for the fucking swimsuit costumes and all that
Bunny
bullshit.
ears.
Bunny ears and all that bullshit. I'm like, hey, man, real real alternate costumes. Cut this shit out. And then also, King brought up Star Ocean. Stop making Star Ocean a fantasy game. Put them dudes out in space. That's what I really want. I want Star Trek, but anime. That's what I want. And, you know, along those lines, I think the evolution I would want to see is I want to see more JRPGs along the lines of Trails in setting up a believable world. If the focus is on telling a story, maybe you can let that story unfold over a trilogy, you know, instead of it just being one game. Like, no, I would like to see stuff like that. I'd also like more like Yakuza in terms of tackling themes that feel more like adult and mature and grounded a little bit. Yakuza Like a Dragon talked about like the shifting political landscape of Japan, a country that's no longer as accepting of criminal elements, and how that can be good and it can be bad. It talked about how it's never too late to build yourself up, even in your late 30s. Those are fascinating ideas, and that is why I love that game so fucking much. You don't have to have a realistic world to do those kind of stories, though. Like, Keen brought up the different genres. I kind of want to go back. I want some more sci-fi, you know, like, and I want real sci-fi. I don't want this, like I said, I don't want no, I'm stuck on a fantasy planet with some advanced technology. I don't want that. I want go out in space. Back in the 70s with mecha anime and 80s and mecha anime. Get your ass back out there in space, boy. I want bring back Phantasy Star and you out there in space just going to different alien planets and shit. I'd also love it if big budget JRPGs could center women a bit more instead of relegating them to like the Atelier brand or fan service games like Compile Heart, like that bullshit. We not gonna run out of games about dudes if we let women have a couple. It's gonna be all right, you know. And you know, it would be nice. It'd be nice if we didn't have to work so hard to have people of color as side characters or like some LGBT characters. I'd take one of the three. All three would be great. I would take one of the three. Fuck something. JRPGs, because like when I came up with this question, I didn't come up with answers. And then I sat there and I started thinking about answers like right before the podcast. And a lot of the answers, I was like, man, I don't want JRPGs to be too much like Western games. Like, that's not really what I'm after. I want JRPGs to be weird and quirky and anime as fuck. And I still think they can do all of that and do the stuff that I'm talking about. I don't want a carbon copy of Dragon Age or The Witcher. I want Final Fantasy and I want Dragon Quest. But I will say I agree with Keem. Like, you got to step up them side quests. I need some side quest writing. And, you know, say what you want about Trails, and I'm going to keep bringing it up every time it's relevant. Say what you want about Trails, but look, man, I ain't never seen no. I always wondered what it would be like to have quest givers that you just recognized and you knew off the bat and you knew where they came from and what they had been up to, and you talked to them, you like, how was so-and-so, how the wife doing? You had that thing with your wife. Like, I want that. You know, like, I remember Trails, Cold Steel 4 gave me a quest that was like some side characters from Cold Steel 1. And they was dealing with like some business stuff that was going on. And you know, it was like, it was a war happening and they needed help with their business because the war made them leave they company, made them leave they building because the company, like the government had just requisitioned the building from them and they had a smaller building and they needed help with this. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. I hadn't seen y'all in a while. I see y'all, this how y'all doing. I was invested. And I didn't even you don't even spend that much time with those characters, but I was invested because I knew them. And that's the kind of stuff that I need every JRPG to kind of step up. You know, stop giving me side quests. It's like, hey, man, go out there and punch a monster in the mouth. Like, I was going to do that anyway. You know, like, and Trails has those quests where you go punch a monster in the mouth. Like, every Trails game has quests where it's like, hey, go punch that monster out in the mouth. He out there in the woods somewhere. He done scared some people. Go punch him in the mouth.
Around that corner.
Sure.
On the right side of the screen.
They big red dot on the map, like going over to that big red dot and punch that dude and punch that monster in the mouth. Like, I bet. But you got to also vary it up. and give me something else. And you know, like Keem said, Yakuza, like the way that they do side quests, you got to do some stuff like that, some out there stuff that gives your world more personality. So I like to see stuff like that. Other than that, you know, like I just don't want JRPGs to change in such a way that it just feels unrecognizable. And I don't want to just rattle off a list of changes where I'm like basically saying the game needs to be more like Western RPGs. I don't want that. But I do want them to try to like think about some of the better elements of Japanese RPGs that are out now and be like, maybe we could take a little bit of that and do our own version. Something like that. Terrence, what's up, man? What do you think JRPGs should go next?
So one thing that Rakeem mentioned that I definitely agree on is I would love to see more budget put into these titles. Because if I'm being honest, I feel like JRPGs are really disrespected in regards to the investment that's put into them. Because a lot of them, they're tossed out on mobile. They're tossed out on lower power systems like the Switch. And I know why that's the case. Because, I mean, obviously the Switch is huge in Japan. More people own the Switch than any other system in Japan. So I get why you would put games on the Switch like that. And even for mobile, I mean, mobile gaming is huge. So I get it. But at the same time, it feels like in comparison to like your action games, your Western RPGs, your sandbox games, JRPGs, they just aren't given that much level of budget and detail. Bandai Namco, you brought them up, Rakeem. They're a big proponent of this in terms of putting out these games that they're not bad. They're okay to good for the most part, but it also feels like just not enough budget is put behind them. Like stuff like Code Vein and Scarlet Nexus really have potential, but there's areas where they fall short because of their lack of budget. I know Scarlet Nexus, there's like scenes where they should just be straight up cut scenes, and they have like the characters and like text boxes just like shifting perspectives and whatnot. And it's just so weird and just like, why?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that cheapness is annoying.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. It's like cheapness. It's just like penny pinching that a lot of these companies and I get it. Not every JRPG needs to be a high budget experience. I am not asking that. In the same way that not any game of any genre doesn't have to be like a high budget experience. You know, I'm not asking that games like Signalis be Resident Evil. It's like, no, they can both exist, you know? And yeah, so games that are made by companies like NIS, you know, Gus, those can exist. Like the Atelier games, they can exist. Death End Request, stuff like that. It's fine for those games to be out there. And, you know, those type of games, they're not going to get big budgets. But companies like Bandai Namco and Square, at least I'll give credit that they've always put budget behind their games. And that's one thing that I will absolutely say Final Fantasy 16, I'll give it credit for, is that at least they're putting some money behind this game, some serious money behind this game. And they're like one of the only RPG companies to do so with their RPGs. So that's one of the main things I'm asking is that I just wish that more would be invested in JRPGs. And I guess maybe like the last thing that I have is, and this kind of goes back to Final Fantasy 16 in regards to, you know, them not really showing a world yet. I just thought about this when they revealed the game. When they kind of like revealed like the revamped gameplay and world for well, not really world, but just when it's like the reintroduction of Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. Like they showed the world and they showed the world, the combat, and like dialogue between characters and stuff that you could do. Just in that short video, that got me like totally into it. Like as long as that game is good, I'm going to go out and buy that. And I feel like 16
comes out.
Yeah, I feel like 16 hasn't done that for me yet. And I'm like I said, I'm not saying that it's going to be a bad game. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a good game. Like Sage said, it has to be. But yeah, there's just some things that it just feels like they're not showing that you think would be obvious as like a RPG, but I don't know. So yeah, just for the genre to move forward, I want to see more investment and more budget in the game, from the developers that can afford it. And I would just like to see them not try and chase Western trends too much. There are great things from the West that you can adopt for sure, but don't lose what makes your games great is ultimately what I'm getting at.
Right.
So I agree with everything you said, especially like the budget thing. Like I didn't think about it, but yeah, like at some point you go, And the sad thing is, we got to be careful about that because there is kind of this budget arms race.
Yeah.
And we were lucky, really, that the Switch was as powerful as it was, because we was gonna be stuck with PSP, PS Vita level graphics because that was the top. The PS Vita and the DS were the top consoles in Japan, and so they were really making games for those consoles. And so like whatever you got, it was like, hey man, it's gonna have to run on these because this is what we make our domestic money on. And then the Switch came out, and it was pretty close. It was an HD console, and it was pretty close. It was better looking than PS3. Not quite what you could get on a PS4, but it was enough that you could get more JRPGs that it looked like, okay, y'all had to put some money into this. And of course, there were some developers that were like, nah, we want to impress people. And Tales of Arise, I feel like they went out of their way to try to impress people. The graphics were not the problem in that game. It was more the writing and stuff like that. So I do agree that like if you don't put the budget in, that's really where you're gonna lose the people. You can't keep showing people games that look like they was made for like the DS and the 3DS. And think
that's a good point. That's a good point. I wish I had said that. Like, yeah, I'm tired of these JRPGs looking like games from like 2 generations ago. Like a lot of these JRPGs we're getting, they still look like they're stuck from the PS3. It's like that shouldn't be the case.
Hell, I'm glad to have PS3. Like I said, like at one point they was looking like some PS Vita, PSP, 3DS type shit, and I was like, man, I don't want to play this. Like I told y'all, like that was the big problem I had during the PS360 era, where I was like, hey man, like I want some new cool shiny stuff from my new cool shiny system from the genre that I love. I don't want to have to like, go play it on the PS on the portable console. Fuck that. Devin, you said you felt like you had something to say, and also, I mean, what do you want JRPGs to go next?
So first is what y'all just got through talking about. That's actually really good for newcomers because for certain individuals, like I know me and King specifically, I know King, like King, he be playing games, he be looking like Dragon Quest 2, and he be having a blast sometimes.
Be having great
So, but we're more hardcore RPG fans, and a lot of time this stuff has where we're just kind of just bred into us. I mean, I'll go back. I still like playing FF7 original. I still don't have no problem with the way it looks. But for newer people coming in, they probably won't be as accepting to it, especially if they're not a fan of RPGs. They're like, what is this? So yeah, having a budget to show something that does look worthwhile, it is important. Now to what I would like to see in JRPGs, I got a small little list. Number one,
no.
I mean, well, actually, one I think we've talked about before. More summons, man. Like, what are summons at, bro?
From other developers.
Like, if it ain't Final Fantasy, like you had other games. I mean, Tales of
everybody used to have
Golden Sun. Golden Sun to this day, in my
Everybody.
opinion, still has some of the best summons.
some of the
period.
best summons.
Yeah.
That
Oh
was,
man,
I remember
the frame,
the summons.
the FPS on
Chrono
those
Cross.
summons from Golden Sun, it was ass, but they still were awesome looking.
Your game boy might blow up, but
I think Wild Arms 2 had summons. I'm pretty sure it had summons.
Cold Steel has summons.
3 had them.
3 had summons. Wild Arms 3 had summons.
Yeah,
Like
3 had
Cold
them.
Steel 2 and 4, they have summons. They have like they call spells, but like giant monsters come down from the sky. I'm like, that's a summon. Like, it ain't like you run out of MP when you do summon mix. And you run out of MP when you cast the spell because it's like, hey, you summon that dude. That's it. So that counts. So, but you're right. No games have summons anymore.
Yeah, we it's like summons have just disappeared. So I definitely would like to see that back. Speaking of Wild Arms, I kind of want to like King said, RPGs are so broad and there's so many that they've done so much. Like you've got stuff like I cannot think of the name of the game, but it came out like a few years ago. It was like some cell shaded JRPG, but it was just like regular people. They just like regular folks in the world. It was like some wacky weapons, just like some dude with glasses. I can't remember the name of the game, but it was like a cell shaded style. Just like regular folks, wasn't nobody with no swords, no nothing like that.
Do you know who made it?
The World Ends With You?
No, that was from Square, right?
Yeah.
This one knows. I want to say this is like an indie game, actually.
Are you talking about Y2K?
That
I do remember
sounds
Y2K.
like that might be it.
Yeah, Y2K.
Yeah.
Regular people.
If you didn't know that the 2 in the middle was a 2, you would call it Yick.
Yeah,
I think it was Y2K.
that was a parody RPG, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
A
the
lot of
one.
jokes and insider stuff. Yeah.
And from what I thought I heard, it was actually pretty good. I mean, it looked. I saw some footage. I'm like, this actually. At first, I was like, man, what is this? What is this? And I kept looking like, this actually don't look half bad. I would kind of like stuff like that. Well, I mean, like I said, RPGs is so varied already. That's one of the things about RPGs that I love with JRPGs. Like Final Fantasy VII, again, this game I'll keep. It'll keep spitting out. It'll keep sputtering out of my mouth to the day I die. The Golden Saucer. I mean, he had everything. I told people like, man, back in the day, I told people like, look, man, once you bought RPG, man, it literally got genres from every, Final Fantasy VII had snowboarding, had racing, had motorcycles, had a fighting game, had basketball. You got everything in one game, man.
Horse breeding, essentially.
Yeah, you got horse
Yeah.
breeding.
With the chocobos.
So I was like, arm wrestling.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like, I guess more outside of the box than we already have. Because Wild Arms, if I'm not mistaken, it's like the only Western like style, which is weird because it's a Western style JRPG, which was always interesting to me. It's like a JRPG that's in the West.
Wild
They
West.
got good. We got that thing for you. You know what I'm saying? Which is Wild Arms 3 is one of my favorite RPGs. So stuff like that. Actually, darker tone stuff a little bit, kind of like similar to Shin Megami Tensei.
Shadow
Or it's a game I actually
Shadow
never.
Heart.
Yeah, Shadow definitely because I know my boy King, he loves some Shadow Hearts.
I
And even
love
that
Shadow.
one,
I like Shadow Hearts too, specifically. That's
yeah.
a good one.
And
Let's go
even
straight
that,
to-
even that kind of goes to what I mean, because Shadow Hearts was a very weird game. Like he had a guy with, he had different stuff. He had a fish. He was just like, bro, you fighting with a fish, like
He literally just picked stuff up in
Just
the
pick- yeah.
areas he went to and hit you with them.
and just like stuff like that.
Locker.
Just
Stop sign. Yeah, vampire.
I just remember like in Game Pro magazine, seeing them have like a giant fish. I'm like, what is going on here?
That was a weapon.
And I didn't at that time. I didn't know that he just literally just picked up. So I was like, oh, it's a chair. All right, cool. I guess that's
Yeah,
my
it
weapon.
was a cutscene. Every time he picked up a new weapon, it was a cutscene.
Wow.
Really cool. And his name was
Um,
Joaquin, so I always remember his name.
Wow. Well, you would definitely remember that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Can I cut in 1 second,
Yeah,
Devin?
go ahead.
I give a shout
Go
out.
ahead,
You're
bro.
talking about darker and surreal stuff. I do have to give a shout out to us because I love me some indie RPG. I know everybody's not on. It's not big budget, but give a shout out to the PC RPG area for indie specifically. There's a very big movement that's been for the last decade of surreal horror,
Yeah.
mind bending.
Oh,
RPG.
yeah.
I know what you're talking
lot
about.
of them.
Yeah, like a lot like the RPG Maker stuff.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Omori, To the Moon,
Mhm.
games like that.
Mhm.
There's others like that as well. They're just really, 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 really popular in their own right.
Yeah,
And you could go on Steam and see them. They're highly rated, very popular.
that's how you get stuff like Undertale. Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah, Undertale is a great example of that. So yeah, if you like those surreal, weird, dark RPGs, they got you in space.
And that brings me to like Squaresoft. Back when it was Squaresoft, a game called Parasite Eve. At that time, it was
Ooh.
like one of the most unique things because it was basically like they was like, let's put Resident Evil and like Final Fantasy together, like an RPG together, and it worked for the most part for what it was. I played it; it was actually solid enough game. Too bad that game franchise died, unfortunately.
Rights problems. It was
Yeah,
rights
rights
issues.
issues.
rights in the game and the subsequent games after the first one were ass.
Yeah.
So-
Rights.
well, not ass,
Play-
but I mean, Third Birthday was the one that really tanked everything. So
Yeah.
I played that one. It was okay for what I remember. I didn't like beat it, but from what I did play, it was okay. So yeah, like darker tone games, kind of outside of the box. I do agree. Actually, one on my list was what Say said about the black characters. But what I'm going to say is, can we get black characters' hairs right? Why in the world Barrett have a doggone perm in the FF7 remake? That man
go
got
see shoot, who put out that video?
Blessing at Alien.
Yeah. Go see Kind of Funny. Go see their video on that. The black hair. Yeah, that's the solution
Like-
right there.
Bruh, why in the world? Barrett has a mid-top fade. He has a coarse hair texture. Why did he have a perm? Why look like he just had like dark, just silky hair in FF73? Maybe I'm just nitpicking. I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
you're not
No.
nitpicking. No, you're right.
No,
you have
no,
every
you're
right.
right.
Yeah.
You have
You
the
know-
right to say that.
You know what's
Everybody else
funny?
pointed it out before it came out, so now you ain't nitpicking.
A hot
Cause
top
look at
firm
people's
is very
making
unique.
the Young Jock memes at first, because Young Jock had like the and oddly enough, I played Destiny 2 not too long ago and made a character. And they only had 2 black hairstyles. One was the Kodak Black, and the other was like just dreads. And when I mean like the Kodak Black, literally like just the
was
wicks.
literally Kodak
I'm
Black.
like, what? Not
You
even a
never see
fade, not
character's
even
face
a
in
bald
Destiny, but
fade.
still.
Anyway, so I definitely agree with Sage. Like we gotta be able to. At this point, I'm pretty sure we know what black people look like. So I don't. It can't be. We can't be that hard to program. Like
They got
do we just,
photos
like,
on the internet.
Do we just
I
make
swear.
do we make the coding that much more difficult? Oh man, it's textures. I can't. Oh my god, it's the waves, girl. So so yeah, summons. And I kind of categorize this one as unique weapon integration. Final Fantasy VIII had one of the most unique ways to get your new weapons. I don't know if y'all remember, you got the magazines. Like you had like these magazines of like weapons. It's like, oh, I want to see what new weapon I want to get, and then it would show you, oh, to get this weapon, you got to go collect this. I thought that was a pretty cool thing. Instead of, I mean, I do like just going like, man, I go to this dungeon, punch this boss in the mouth, give me your weapon. I like that too. And I do like what 10 did, even though they went a little overboard for some of them. The FF10 Ultimate Weapons, it's like I don't know if I want
like
that
80
level.
times.
200.
Like 150, yeah, 200.
Oh shit, it was 2.
And
Oh,
12.
It was 200.
200.
I don't know if I want that level of like, but maybe just okay. You do something interesting, but yeah, don't make it that.
Let me cut in real quick. Let me tell you something right now. About them 200 lightning strikes, Lulu went without. I made her one. She had a fresh doll from me. She didn't get that one.
I think she is the one that I didn't get the ultimate weapon for. And I kind of want to go back and get it, but I was just like, bro, 200. Somebody was in the office like, yeah, 200 sounds like a reasonable number. I'll allow it. It's like, bro, get out of here, man. Y'all keep it. Y'all probably threw some. Somebody was like, I think that's a little bit much. Maybe like 50. No, 200. You threw the guy that was reasonable out, but you kept the guy in that was 13 and said, hey, man, if the main character dies that you controlling in the game. Oh, that sounds pretty good. Yeah. Okay. But they have Phoenix Downs. Can't they give him one? Nope. It don't work for them. But wait, it don't matter who I'm controlling. Nope. It don't matter. But yeah, that's my list. I'm surprised they fixed it then.
Yeah.
Devin, I mean, that was actually great, especially like the part about the hair. Like, man, I'm tired of this. Like, I know I've been rocking the fade since like 1992, but like other people want other hairstyles, so we can do better than this. Come on, man. Will, close us out, man. What you looking for? Like, what do you want to see from JRPGs going forward?
Man, I don't know if I even have as much as a list because y'all kind of hit on everything under the sun, especially hitting on certain ones such as Bandai Namco. I'm gonna need y'all to get out y'all feelings with these IPs and do better. Y'all got money to spend, y'all just don't want to. Square, I don't know what to say for y'all. Y'all innovate almost at every turn to the point where y'all almost innovate to a fault, and I'm gonna need y'all to fix that. But for JRPGs, I definitely do want some more settings. I wouldn't even care if it was just an everyday setting, and then I had to go and save the world from my everyday setting. I don't want to just hop off and be isekai away. I ain't trying to do that. We ain't here for that. I like set me off in the middle of New York and let this happen in New York or wherever it may be. You know what I'm saying? Bring back some of them Western times because I definitely like Wild Arms 3, Wild Arms 2. Like bring that, even though we are getting that spiritual successor with Penny Blood and Armed something. I forgot the name of it.
Thanks for reminding me. Thank you. I do my Kickstarter survey. I appreciate that. Thanks for reminding me.
You're welcome, King. So we got that. We got those coming up. So we're starting to get more of those things. But other than that, my biggest thing is really continue to be creative and don't just stray so far. Don't do it. Like we talked about earlier. Don't try to appease everyone because when you try to get everyone, you end up losing a hell of a lot more than you gained. Because you might mess around and gain that GTA COD section, but you're gonna fuck around and lose me.
They ain't gaining no GTA COD.
I'm just saying. I know they ain't. But just saying if they did.
They play the quad stack and they ain't playing nothing else. That's it. All right.
You right. They explain it.
Explain to the
quad
audience what
stack?
quad stack is.
The
Okay,
quad stack
okay.
is the 4 games that every casual gaming fan buys. There's nothing wrong. In fact, there's more than just casual fans that buy it. Like hardcore fans buy these too.
Yeah.
That's why they sell so well. But like there's certain people, all they care about are 4 games. They care about GTA, they care about Call of Duty, they care about NBA, and they care about Madden. That's it. They don't want nothing else. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like there's not like you chasing after that audience, and it's like they don't want anything else. They got what they want and they're happy. Let them be happy. You over there, how can I shake them hard enough to get some money to fall out their pockets? Give me a game. Like, no. Leave them alone. Like, they all right. They doing just fine by themselves, playing their quad stack. They walk into GameStop every year, and they like, hey, man, where the new Call of Duty? Where the new 2K? Where the new Madden? And they've had GTA for 7 years, and they still playing it. That's all they need. Leave them alone. Like, everybody else, like, you should not be aiming for them. You should be aiming for everybody else. See if you can get maybe some of the people, like, also, first off, definitely try to get your base audience, but then maybe see if you can get the people that play God of War. You know, it was some open world type stuff. Maybe you get them. Maybe you, well, not open world, but like fantasy type stuff. Maybe you get some of them. But like, you're not finna get GTA and COD audience. That is, put that out your mind.
That's asking for too much. So yeah, like I said, I don't have a lot to really say. Y'all pretty much hit the nail on the head every single time I even wanted to think about saying something. So shout outs to these 4 gentlemen that I work with. They're amazing. So they nailed it. Thank you. I've said my part. I just want more of them to come out, and I just don't want JRPGs to slide off so far that I don't recognize them. That's it.
I think it's gonna wrap it up for this week's episode. If you liked it, I need a few things from you. If you didn't like it, I still need a few things from you. I need you to do us a favor, hit that subscription button on YouTube. I need you to follow us on Twitter. I need you to follow us on TikTok. Don't just check us out. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. You don't know, you might make a new friend. And do me a personal favor and have an excellent week. Peace.